All right, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening for the people who are joining us for late. My name is Chahine. I am the head of product of Kpler. Today, our product manager, Shruti Bansal, and our customer success manager, Choi, are going to present you our new released freight solution, and we'll also demo it with you live. We are welcoming more questions also on the chat that we will answer at the end of the meeting. This session is recorded and we'll publish it on the YouTube Kpler channel shortly after the presentation. So please do not hesitate to ask questions. I'm handing it over now to Shruti to start the presentation and the demo. Thank you.
Thanks, Clark. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the webinar. We are extremely excited to be sharing our latest product with you. Kicking off with the mission of Kpler Freight, it has been launched with one mission: provide an unbiased, one-stop shop freight intelligence tool to the industry. Both in my own experience of 9 years in the maritime industry as an analyst and a trader, as well as the constant feedback we get from our clients, we identified 3 pain points of the industry when it came to data intelligence. The first one being standalone ad hoc data. So what we saw was there's a lot of cargo focused data providers out there, or there's freight focused data providers out there, but there's no one comprehensive tool or solution that combines the two and offers quality data to the users. Secondly, there's a lack of integrated planning between planning and ops. So the tools that we do see out there available for shipping are primarily focused on chartering and operations and not so much on the market analytics side. And lastly, again, there's a bit of skepticism around the data that's out there, as well as we see influenced market views coming from providers having stakeholding shares in the industry. And these are the 3 core things that we're trying to resolve through our solution. We're trying to provide enriched freight intelligence through curated data. So you'll see some examples in the demo where we've taken the data that we have and we've translated them into market indicators that the users are familiar with. Secondly, we are closing the integration loop, firstly, by having a single terminal and APIs that the users can access for both cargo and freight. And secondly, focusing more on the market analytics side rather than operations and execution. So before you execute a trade, we want to try and assist the users to determine what kind of trades they should be putting in. And lastly, strength of Kpler has been its organic growth over the last 6 years, and through which we are able to offer neutral market transparency through trusted methodology. So we've discussed what were the pain points and how we're trying to resolve them. And now coming to the best part, what does the freight module actually entail? Well, here's a quick overview of all the features that Kpler module offers. I will not be going into the details of each of them, as we have our amazing colleague Choi, who will be walking you guys through all the features of the product. Joel, all yours. I'm just going to stop sharing.
Great. Thanks, Shruti. Well, my name is Joel Choi, and I'm the Customer Success Manager in Houston. I'm excited to share our new freight metrics at Kpler. Kpler is a web-based application that consists of 2 main segments, the interactive map and the analytics. Here you can see the interactive map. And I'll start off by showing our flows in floating storage for those of you who aren't familiar with our platform. It's important to begin here as our flows in fleet metrics data is core of our platform, and our clients have trusted our data for years. I mention this because the data that goes into our flows in floating storage is what builds out our freight demand numbers. So here, as you can see, I'm looking at the US monthly exports for crude. And here you can easily see the trends. And I'm also going to jump into our floating storage module. So here we're looking at the trending floating storage around China region for crude. And as you can see, there's been a sharp increase in the past few weeks. The first freight specific metric I'm going to be showing you today is our ton miles. So for ton miles is a very good indicator because, so for some of you guys may know, it's very tedious to calculate cargo tons multiplied by nautical miles distance traveled. So here we made it very easy for you guys to just quickly look at it at a glance. Ton miles is a great metric to look at because as the market has more voyages, that equals more ton miles, which ultimately equals more demand. And as you can see from, there's this sharp increase from March to April. And as you can see, just be able to see the quick trends. And within the freight metrics, we also have our average speed. And average speed is a key metric for market sentiment because if vessels are speeding up, most of the time they are pretty positive on the market outlook. Higher speeds result in higher fuel costs, so you have to be pretty bullish to incur these extra costs. So a popular route would be Saudi Arabia to China. And here you can see from March to April, there was a pretty sharp increase in average speed because, as you know, oil prices went down significantly, combined with the bull run for tanker rates as fuel costs were dropping. And if you want to dig into a little bit further and investigate for the specific month, you can see all the vessels that consisted of the month, looking at the cargo, the average speed, and the start date. Our next demand indicator I'll be showing you today is our fleet utilization. Our fleet utilization is useful because our cargo data and our floating storage data comes together to see how many vessels were loaded in a particular time period. This is great for identifying trends for bull and bear runs in the tanker market, as a number of loaded vessels has a positive correlation with freight rates. And as you can see on a quick glance, it's been peaking around May 2nd and 3rd with a gradual decline since then. As you can see, the tanker rates have come down quite a bit. So far, what I've shown you is on the demand side, and I'm going to be switching over to our supply side. So within the fleet utilization, let's say we look at the ballast. Instead of looking at loaded vessels, we want to look at ballast vessels. We'll be able to see that there's a inverse of the chart. And this was, as you can see, the dip would be the same day. And a requested feature was to view ballast capacity between clean and dirty products for the vessels, so that what we are doing here is we make an assumption that if the last product was dirty, it won't be carrying clean. And based on that, we split the ballast capacity into 4 categories. And I'll be doing that here. And this will give you a quick glance looking at the differences between the different products for our 4 main categories: clean, crude, DPP, NPC, and others. And if you want to investigate further, you can click on a specific market and look into the vessels further. And now, instead of looking at a macro point of view, we can start to narrow it down as well. So looking at Mideast Gulf, and let's say we only want to look at crude and clean products. So let's go ahead and run that. As you can see, the past few weeks has dropped from the average just by looking at a quick glance. And so looking at this, you can conclude that the supply is pretty tight. And let's say you are concerned with only the VLCCs. Well, within the capacity module, you can change the minimum threshold. So let's look at only the VLCCs. And now we've further down our search. And as you can see, there's VLCCs is showing around 20 to 23. So even for VLCCs, we're at quite a bit down from the minimum for the average for the fleet utilization. And to reiterate, this is the realized capacity and the vessels that have already made it to the Mideast Gulf. So now we'll be shifting to the expected capacity and shifting from realized data to predictive data within the ballast capacity. So for ballast capacity, we're looking at all the ballast vessels in our system, and we're aggregating them based on the next destination ETA. So let's say for 50 ballast VLCCs is the average in the Mideast Gulf, and we want to see the availability within the next 2 weeks. Looking at the availability, it's going to be pretty tight. It's showing 27 and 17 for the next couple of weeks. Next, we can filter down. If you're looking to book a VLCC in the next few weeks, you can filter by source. And here you can see that we have 3 categories of sources: forecast, AIS, and fixture. And if you're looking to book a VLCC in the next few weeks, using filtering by source, you can rule out the vessels showing fixture. So let's say you just want to focus on the vessels that have AIS as a source. Here you can view all the vessels in its destination ETA. And let's say you're particularly interested in a specific vessel. So as you click on that vessel, it's going to take you back to the interactive map that I mentioned earlier. And here you can see on the right panel, all the information for the vessels. Right here is showing the voyages. But let's say you want to look at the info to see if it's compliant, to shortlist the vessel candidates. And then you can go to your broker as you've kind of solidified your list of vessels to discuss. So looking at this will show you the voyages, port technical info as you're shortlisting the candidates. And while we're on the map, I did want to show you an exciting new feature that a lot of our clients are excited about, and it is our Polygons feature. So zooming out a little bit, you can activate the polygons on the right-hand side. And here, just looking at a quick glance, as you might have noticed, we prioritize market over geography, as it would make a lot more sense for our users, and it's easy to see what's going on in a particular region. So since we've spent some time in Mideast Gulf this morning, as you click on Mideast Gulf, you can quickly see an overview of all the vessels consisting of this region and looking at the loaded and ballast balance. The next metric I want to show you is our fleet development. For our fleet development, it's a great macro view on what's happening on the supply side. There are 3 categories: available, deliveries, and scrapping. For available, these are the vessels that are currently in service. For deliveries, these are the new vessels that have been delivered. And for scrapping, these are the vessels ordered to be scrapped. So here, as you can see, right now, the total number of vessels tankers we're tracking is 9,000. If we look at deliveries, we'll see some peaks in January for each of the years, just off a quick glance. And this makes sense because a lot of the owners would want to push Q4 to January to push the age of the vessel to be 1 year younger. And looking at scrapping, you can see that it's slightly dipped, and that makes sense because right now in the market, nobody wants to be scrapping. And within the fleet development, we also have IMO 2020 compliant information. Let's say if I want to look at available vessels and how many have a scrubber on board, you can split by compliance method. Sorry. And for these 3 categories, we're going to be showing you ones that are already scrubber fitted, ones that are planned, and ones that are ready to be fitted. So here it's showing 778 that are scrubber fitted. And as previously, you can investigate further into the specific month and all the vessels involved and the build year and the dead weight. You can also dig into what type of vessel has the most scrubbers. So on this left-hand side, instead of viewing it by compliance method, we're going to look at it by vessel type. And let's see the ones that are only scrubber fitted. Here you can see, look at it by vessel type, and it makes sense because the larger vessels just economically makes more sense to have the scrubbers fitted on board. Our last metric for the supply side is congestion, and this is a really exciting category as well. Congestion is important because it's important to be, as you're analyzing the fleet, to always have a number of ships in the back of your mind that are usually stuck in congestion. Right here, you can kind of see it's around 380 vessels that are in congestion globally. And if we want to dig into further and look at China, and let's say you want to look at the China congestion, and let's say you want to even go more granular and look at by ports, we can do this as well. And this will show you all the vessels waiting to go to berth within China, and it's going to show you the ports as well. So just like before, if you want to dig in further for a specific port, you can dig in further and it'll show the vessels, how much it's discharging and the products carrying, and also the waiting time. This is important for making actionable items for your operations. So incoming into China, looking at the ports with maximum congestion, you could potentially be looking at delays and having actionable items like asking the operator to slow down heading into the port. So we looked at flows, we looked at floating storage, and we looked at some of our demand and supply indicators. So let's see how it all comes together within our fleet utilization. And we can access this last query actually, instead of building it out again. I've actually favorited this. So if I scroll down and click on my favorited fleet utilization tab, it's gonna have the preset loaded of the queries that I've already selected before. This is important because it'll save you a lot of time, and as the queries can become pretty complex, or if you ever find yourself doing a live webinar and hoping not to mess up product launch. For fleet utilization, as you can see, I filtered by vessel state. I turned on percent utilization, and I'm only looking at VLCCs. So this gap represents the differences of the balance between loaded and balance. So the wider the gap, the more bullish the freight market is. And as long as the loaded is higher, it's going to be pointing towards a bullish market. And since the peak, the gap seems to be decreasing, just looking at a quick glance, and it may be pointing to rates starting to normalize, but this is up to you to how you want to interpret the data. And here you can drag the timeline to the left to look at seasonality, to see it from a longer perspective, and looking at when you can expect the market to change. In conclusion, we've combined with other market indicators we went over, we're able to see the trends of a bull run for the tanker market. And using these metrics and indicators, these are great tools to keep a close eye on the market as the rates potentially begin to normalize. Before I handed it back to Shruti, I wanted to point out one of the examples of how I favored it is just to start up here. You can also export any of the graphs and data that you build out within our freight metrics. You can change up the tabular view. And we also have a moving average as well. And lastly, if you ever need assistance from our team, you can always click our chat button to chat with a live agent or to find articles and answer your own questions, or you can schedule a training session. I hope at least a few of these features and indicators got you pretty excited for the many use cases. And for those of you who are looking to use our freight metrics with API, we have that as well. And now I'll hand it back over to Shruti.
Thanks, Choi. So yeah, what you guys saw was a module offering various demand and supply indicators, as well as some functionality for the charters. You have the option to look at the matrix that we are providing. Otherwise, we have these API that are put in place, and you can access the data and use and interpret market trends as per your likings. After talking about what we have, let's take a quick glimpse into how exactly data has been utilized for freight intelligence at Kpler. I will take this opportunity to talk about why data is important in the first place. Data has been revolutionizing industries across globe, but why is that? If you look at the visual on the left, It's a simple plot of some data points. Right now, it could be anything. We don't know what it represents. So while data on its own is great, if left untreated, it doesn't offer much. However, with some simple color coding, you can reveal the picture behind this blue data box. So you see this lovely lady popping up. So this is the power of data. It can help reveal pictures. It can help you identify patterns as well as convert those patterns into actions. So this was general power of the data. What does data look like for Kepler? Here is a sample of three core elements of data sets that we're using for freight. First and foremost being we are tracking over 20,000 active tankers and bulkers. So this is a snapshot of our tanker fleet. We have something similar on bulkers. This is just active vessels. We have many more vessels that we are still keeping track of for scrapping and for other reasons. So we are tracking the daily movement of these vessels. How are we doing that? We have translated and processed over 2.2 billion AI signals so far, and we've translated and cleaned them into meaningful information to reveal patterns, such as what you see. Again, a snapshot of 2 months of positions that we have processed, but the data goes back 2 to 3 years of history and help our users to make commercial decisions based on these patterns and the delta contained in them. Lastly, I would like to show the global footprint of the ports and berths we've mapped. So here you see 12,000 berths and 2,800 ports that we've mapped across commodities across the globe. To kind of identify the vessel movements and what exactly these movements represent. If it's loading, discharge, STS, floating storage, distressed cargoes, congestion, so on and so forth. So to basically pinpoint and pin down every activity of the vessel that we follow. Besides these data points, we also have a huge influx of data that comes to us from various other sources in different forms. For example, your port lineups, broker lineups, our business partnerships with port authorities, some market intelligence coming from our in-house analyst team as well. And this is all, again, is all clean, combined, and translated into market indicators that the users can easily read, and what we saw in the demo earlier. Now, we have this clean data that we have tracked and accumulated. How we are using that for freight. I just want to show an example for congestion. Here is an example of Port of Ulsan in South Korea. What we did to build our congestion indicator was take all the historical position of the vessels and identify where exactly they wait before they go to berth to load or discharge cargo. Then using an algo, we map these areas globally, keeping in mind to exclude our existing ports and berths mapping. This then becomes our waiting zone. Now, every time a vessel comes into the waiting zone, we start monitoring it to see if it's loaded or ballast, if it has called the relevant port berth yet, or how long did it actually spend in the waiting zone. Applying all these business logic results in what you see on the congestion time series, which is this. So a daily aggregation processing of this data leads to an easy to follow time series under our congestion feature. So here you see Ulsan, the count of vessels split by different classifications of the vessel types, a daily snapshot. You can further drill down into the products. You can look at the duration and also look at specific vessels. So this is just a small glimpse into our methodology that went into preparing the freight module. If you are interested in more of this, or if you want to trial the freight module, please feel free to reach out to sales@kpler.com. We will now take few questions if there are any. Otherwise, I wish you all a great day and thank you for your time.
So Shruti, there is many, so it's not yet over, and wish them a great day. And also, please all stay connected. First of all, thank you very much, Shruti and Joel, for the wonderful presentation and demo. We have many questions from all of you. So one of the first one that was asked, and I think you just answered, was how basically do you define congestion? So Shruti just mentioned and explained the methodology. If you still need a more detailed answer, please let us know, and then we'll refine the answer. Shruti, there is multiple question about Can we use this tool also for LNG tanker? Do we also follow up LNG freights?
So for now, this module is available for bulkers and crude tankers. We've just launched it last week, and once it's stabilized, we'll soon be launching gas carriers as well in the coming months. So we'll keep you guys updated as soon as it's out.
Okay, thank you very much, Shruti. Do we plan so someone is asking if we are planning basically to show freight rates on our platform.
It's not in the roadmap yet, but it'll go back to our feedback funnel. And if there's enough feedback, that's what is deciding the roadmap for the product. And if we find enough feedback, we'll surely work towards adding that.
Thank you. From also multiple other people, how often do we refresh the data, the fleet data, and we scrap this data also from brokers in general, or what kind of sources do we have those data from?
So the data frequency depends on the data source. Our AIS information is processed live every minute as soon as it comes in. However, if there is a port authority or a broker lineup that we're receiving, that depends on the frequency of what we get. So it can range from every minute to max a week. On the fleet data itself, that's getting refreshed. The static fleet data on the fleet development that you see is refreshed twice a week, but the live fleet utilization data is scraped and processed as soon as it comes through.
So it's great that you're talking about AIS data. Do we actually adjust for missing AIS signals and ghost ships?
We try to. That's where our business partnerships come in place. This is where our analysts come in place who are handling the product quality. And if they see some ghost zones or ghost vessels, they try to investigate more. They sometimes call the agents or port lineups, port authorities, and we manually fill in these gaps.
Thank you. Just so you know as well, we are working on our roadmap to also improve our AIS signal processing and ensuring that we can better predict a path or forecast basically the plans for the destination and so forth. Can we identify whether any vessel was not accepted in a port in the past and any of the reasons for?
No, you can't do that as of now.
All right. Is freight economics calculated?
We have a basic freight calculator, if that's what you're referring to, which can give you simple calculations on ETA distance based on the speeds and origin and destination that you plug in. But again, a full-fledged freight calculator will come in the coming months.
Yes, we are actually designing some very cool feature around this, so stay tuned. We'll certainly notify you as soon as possible once done. So you would be able to compare, for example, your various options visually.
Mm-hmm.
So when looking at the recent data, like June, July, how is it possible to differentiate the lack of complete data set and a drop in, let's say, of fleet utilization?
Yes, so this is something that we are working on to improve. So for the last 2 or 3 days data, it still takes time to stabilize because we are still getting fed a lot of information. A lot of vessels open or declare their information. It's lagged. So after it has actually done what it's supposed to do, it declares information later on. And this is where we are trying to work on a predictive model so that we can fill in these gaps, and then you can differentiate between actual and predictive data, just like what we have on our flows. And also incorporating more forecasting models, be it for the next destination or the status, the loaded ballast status. So this is all under works right now.
Thank you. We still have few, so bear with us.
Mm-hmm.
How back will the data on fleet utilization go, right, date-wise?
So it's right now it's 2018 onwards, and we'll add 2 more years of history, so 2016 onwards should be available.
Thank you. Can you filter vessels by specific product, naphtha, gasoline, jet? If not, will these options be offered in the future?
It depends on which feature you're talking about. If it's on congestion, you can already do that. If it's on ton miles and speed, you can also do that. If it's referring to fleet utilization, to look at ballast capacity, we try to keep it a bit high level so that we have more sustainable splits or more comprehensive splits, because the further we go into products, the more we lose the information. But if it's something that is needed, you can connect it through the API to our trade and flows information and kind of deduce that within, let's say, clean products or dirty products, what exactly was the product inside the vessel.
All right, so 3 last questions, and then we are basically gonna close the webinar. When calculating average speed, what is the minimum speed you add to the calculation?
So the way we are calculating average speed is we are looking at the voyage duration and distance. We are not looking at the reported AIS speed because the data is faulty, suffers from typos. So we're looking at when the vessel left the port zone and until it enters the waiting zone of the destination port. So that's our voyage duration and distance, and we're calculating effective speed based on that. It doesn't exclude bunkering stops as of now. But again, there's something that is a bit of a refinement that will come in the coming months. We are also considering to add special filters for the speed. So if you want to exclude, let's say, vessels below 6 knots, you would be able to do that on the module.
Thank you. So I'm going to merge 2 of the questions that are remaining around basically how can you infer which product of the vessels are waiting in the congestion zone, and how do you differentiate with floating storage, for example, if the vessel is staying idle for a few days, right?
So what we're trying right now, we're working with an assumption that if the vessel has existing port call, so it is calling to a specific or the relevant or respective port or berth, it's counted as congestion. If it's not, then we start considering is that floating storage or STS. However, there will always be this gap with vessels switching between floating storage and congestion. And as of now, it's very hard to differentiate between the two. But you can look at what we have on floating storage, then you can look at what we have on congestion, see if the port calls are relevant and if the vessel is actually calling to the port or not.
So I know that there is some remaining questions. We are not gonna, so there is 3 that came up. We are not gonna take more than 3 again, but those 3 are quite interesting. I see everything you've shown is related to tankers. Do we have the same functionality for bulkers?
Absolutely, we have the exact same module that's offered on the dry.kpler.com. It's exactly the same.
Thank you very much. Do we have any list for the non-performing vessels and their history of breakdown as part of the basically the whole fleet analysis?
Unfortunately, no, not at this point.
And finally, could you please just explain briefly the purpose of the feature called Polygon, and why is it so used, or why is it so requested?
So polygons offer area matrix. From a freight point of view, it's very relevant to see what exactly is in an area. And again, if I just, like Joel mentioned, when we say that you have all these zones that you can use for the time series, clients would often question, okay, how are you defining these zones, or what do they mean? So it's a visual feature it's just the version 1 where you can just see how we've mapped the world and how we're splitting these areas and how. So the snapshot that you saw for Middle Gulf, it showed you a quick snapshot of loaded ballast vessels, and the daily aggregation of this data is what forms the time series. So visually, it helps people to understand. Then again, you can drill to the polygon and see what's exactly in there. In version 2 of the polygons, we'll have more interactive polygons. So you'll be able to monitor what has come inside a polygon or what's left in the last 30 to 60 days. You would also be able to create your own custom polygons and create alerts. So if you want to monitor some diversion points on the map and you want to see if vessels have started diverting, so as soon as the vessel will exit that physical boundary of the polygon, you'll get those alerts. So all of this, again, a lot of features, a lot of improvement, refining. We constantly work on those and we'll be delivering those in the coming months.
Thank you very much, Shruti. Thank you very much again, Joel. And thank you very much to everyone joining this afternoon. It's been great. This presentation and recording will be posted on our YouTube channel, and we will share it with everyone. And thanks again for the question. On that note, we wish you all a very nice day and end of the week. And hopefully everyone is also staying safe. Have a very nice day, everyone. Thank you.